Hello and thank you for tuning in to 90.4 Oman FM. This is Sara Lawati, and today we're going to learn all about the economic developments that Oman has made in the private sector. Joining me at the studio is Mohammed Moosa, who is the Private Sector Development Director for the National Program for Investment and Foreign Trade Development, otherwise known as Nazdaher. Welcome and thank you for joining us here at the studio.
Thank you for having me, Sara. Although I must interject there and say we used to be the National Program for Investment and Export Development, and we've now gone into a strategic transformation, and we are now the National Program for Private Sector and Foreign Trade Development.
That's my bad. Okay, we are going to talk about this development later on. But before we do that, I actually wanted to start off with a more broad question, and that is, what is Nazdaher?
So Nazdaher, as I mentioned, is the National Program for Private Sector and Foreign Trade Development. And I'd love to talk about Nazdaher, but before I do, I want to talk about this.
Okay.
So this is Oman's vision document. I hope I didn't wave it too much into the microphone, but so this is our compass, right? And this is what we should all be excited about, because it gives us a clear direction from 2020 to 2040. And it's also important to say that Nazdaher works within an ecosystem of other national programs. So all the national programs are committed to accelerating the Vision 2040. And for us in Nazdaher, we work under the pillar of private sector, investment, and international cooperation, of which there are 5 national programs under that strategic pillar. So we are one program within an ecosystem of programs. So who's Nazdaher and what do we do? So we are, as I mentioned, a program under the vision to accelerate that specific strategic pillar within the vision. Oman has very ambitious goals, and I really hope that as many people as possible look into this document. I didn't bring the full document today, just to save papers, because one of our goals within the vision is carbon neutrality by 2050.
Okay.
So I printed as few papers as possible, just covering the pillar that we're under and the larger vision. So under the vision, you can go directly to where we have our targets, and there are targets for Oman in general, and there are targets under each strategic pillar. So Nazdaher works to accelerate the targets for Oman under the private sector and foreign trade. We used to work as the National Program for Investment and Export Development, under which and during the periods of 2021 to 2023, we came out with many initiatives which the government took on. So how does that work? So as a program, we look at what is happening in the market in Oman, and we study that against the goals of the vision, okay? And we would then say, we found certain gaps that we need to address. So we are then partners with the government, where we co-create initiatives that the government then takes on. So if we were to talk about during the previous program of investment and export development, if we talk about the business environment, there are many initiatives that you might have heard of on the ground today that Nazdaher was a partner in co-creating, such as the National Negotiation Team, the National Investment Strategy, the Invest in Oman Lounge. So, if you pass by the airport, you'll see the beautiful Invest in Oman. So one of the initiatives that the program worked on, the Investment Incentives Guide, the Investment Map, and the Investor Residence Program. We also had worked to develop certain investment opportunities in key sectors that were set out by the vision. Okay? And we then followed up to see, how many of those, not just those investments that we had developed, but the investments that were happening on the ground in Oman, what was the status of those investments? So if an investment has reached a final investment decision, then we had put it into a tracker to understand how far along was that investment, the status of that investment. So we were tracking up to 11 billion Omani riyals worth of investment into Oman. Investments take time, right? And sometimes if we're not tracking all of those investments and understanding, what is the on the ground reality for them, then it's hard to see, into the future. And it's hard to get excited about something you don't know. So we're trying to really shed light on the fact that there are billions and billions of riyals worth of investment in the pipeline coming in Oman. So there's a lot to be excited about in terms of the vision.
Yeah, for sure. I want to backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
And you did mention that Nazdaher's vision changed from being exports to foreign trade. Why did that change happen?
So the transformation happened. We were previously working in investment and export development.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, as a program, we don't own any of these initiatives. We help create them, and the government takes them on, or other entities within Oman take them on to execute on those. So from between the 2021 to 2023, we developed a whole number of initiatives that we then passed on to the government. There was a certain level of maturity that was reached in the investment sector that, we felt comfortable to move on to the next priority, which was the private sector and foreign trade development. So now we're very excited about the potential for the Omani private sector. We're seeing, and I would love to, not to really advertise this, but a few weeks ago, I was invited to speak at one of BIA's accelerators. And I saw a whole bunch of young Omani entrepreneurs, straight out of university or who are already on their second or third startup with so much potential. I was invited a few weeks ago to speak at one of BIA's accelerators. And I was astonished at the level of these young Omani entrepreneurs. And this is one of the companies that I had spoken to. And they're, a group of young Omani students who were not just passionate about, what it was that they were doing, but were technically sound. They knew how to build a product. And they did it in a sustainable way. They took waste potatoes and turned it into this, and I'm not a technical person, I don't understand the chemistry behind it, but they took it and made a solution out of it and put the solution onto this microfiber cloth. And when you wipe a glass with this solution, that glass becomes anti-fog for a period of 6 months. So from a perspective of ideas, from a perspective of technical know-how, there is so much potential in Oman. The leap that we need to make is getting the commercial acumen and the understanding of how to run a business, how to take a startup from 0 to 1, and really taking it into the next stratosphere. But we also have examples today of Omani startups that have, already gone beyond. If we speak about Karzati, which exited to Kavak, that's a huge achievement. And I would love for us to talk about it, not here today, but in general. We have 4401, which raised a Series A round of $37 million. As far as I am aware, that is the largest Series A funding round for any deep tech startup, not only in the Middle East, but the Middle East and Africa, and one of the largest as well in Asia. So we have these great achievements. And that's just up on the startup side. So for us as a program, our main focus is on medium and large companies. And these companies are the ones that already have, the groundwork done. They already have a sizable market. So how can we help them, grow beyond that? And so we're working on many initiatives. And perhaps the most important of all of those is ensuring that there is a strong and clear line of communication between the private sector and the government. Several weeks ago, His Majesty held a meeting with many representatives of the private sector, and it was, a big sign of the commitment of His Majesty, of the government, of the vision for making the private sector an inclusive partner in the growth of the economy. And if we go back, and I'm sorry, I'm going to keep referring back to this. I'm going to keep referring back to this because this is our compass. This is our guiding light for the next 20 years. Right here in this document, it says that the main driver of our economy in the future and today is the private sector. So what do we do at Nazdaher? We try to make sure that the private sector has a voice and is capable of taking on this vision and really taking Oman forward. If we talk about the largest economies in the world, let's talk about the US, right? If we talk about the US, the US economy is driven by their private sector, right? And if you only go back 20 years ago, Google, which is one of the largest companies in the world, was still in someone's garage. So the potential is there. We're already seeing those young entrepreneurs today, and hopefully they then mature and grow into that space where we as a program can work with them, where they are medium companies, where there are large companies. And there is so much that we are doing here in Oman that can help these companies elevate themselves towards becoming major contributors towards the economy.
Wow, it's obviously very inspirational what you just said, especially for anyone working in the private sector. But correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of Oman's current landscape when it comes to businesses is made up mostly of SMEs. So why are we focusing more on medium to large companies?
That's an excellent question, Sara. So if we look at the makeup of Oman's economy, yes, the majority of registered companies are small and medium companies. But if we look at it from a economic perspective, in the sense that who are the major contributors towards the economy, then it is the medium and the large companies. If we're talking purely around contribution towards GDP, okay? Now, what we want is for small companies to become medium companies, and for medium companies to become large companies, and for large companies to become, maybe it's not categorized this way, but mega large companies, corporations, giants of industry. But in order for those small companies to start to make that leap, they need a market, right? So every economy is made up of markets. Every human interaction is made up of markets. So if the market doesn't exist for those small companies to interact with medium companies, with large companies, then it'll be very difficult for them to grow. But a lot of what we're doing, even though our focus is on medium and large companies, there will be an impact for small companies. So one of the sayings I always tell my team is our goal is to make the pie bigger, but as we make the pie bigger, we need to make it fairer. So what does that mean? It means that those opportunities that we're creating, we need to ensure that small companies do have a chance, right? And they do have the opportunity to grow. And not just grow, to learn, right? Because when you're a first-time entrepreneur, the likelihood of you failing is extremely high, right? But what you want is that when that founder then goes and starts another company, they've learned, right? And they've taken those lessons from that first time, taken it into the second time, and build something new. And then maybe they do it another time and another time. And we're seeing many entrepreneurs in Oman doing this. There is a wave of, energy in Oman that is unparalleled in the region. And what we need to do as a program is to harness that energy, to support that energy, and to make sure that those companies that are striving for more get the support they need in order to become, as I said, the giants of industry.
Earlier, you mentioned that you target some key sectors for these investments. What are those key sectors, and why did you choose them?
Sure. So when we were focusing on sectors, that was primarily during the old program of investment and export development. The vision sets out these sectors, okay? But obviously we could not work on all of those sectors all at once. So we went through different sector by sector, working with the concerned authorities, with the ministries, to help them and help all of the stakeholders develop opportunities and understand how to build out investment opportunities. So of the sectors that we worked on previously, included tourism, it included energy, youth and sports, health, manufacturing, mining, food securities, and logistics. So there are other sectors within the vision that were set out, but these were the ones that we covered. And if we talk about some of these sectors, there are some that have exceeded their KPIs. So if we talk about health, the Ministry of Health has gone beyond and exceeded their investment KPIs. We saw factories that were announced in the last year, I believe in Salalah, that produce different goods that are used in our healthcare system. That's a huge advancement. That means that la samahallah, we have another pandemic. We are in a much stronger position as a country to go back to our local manufacturing industry and ensure that we have a security of supply.
Okay. And you also did say that you are here to accelerate the voice of the private sector. Now, I wanted to ask you, how does that make you as Nazdaher different from, let's say, the Chamber of Commerce or Invest Oman?
So, again, great question. So, we work hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce. So every time we talk to them, I like to say two words: partnership, co-creation.
Okay.
So under the royal decree, the Chamber of Commerce is the voice of the private sector and the official representative for the private sector with the government. So we're working hand in hand with them to ensure that we have a clear governance model and a clear process for interaction with the government. What is our commitment to this? Our commitment is to make sure that as we move forward, we will do our level best and more to ensure that that voice is heard. Why, right? Why should we as a government ensure that the voice of the private sector is heard? If we want to achieve this, and if we, are committed to saying that the words in this document are our compass, our guide, the words in this document say that the private sector are the driving force of Oman's economy moving into 2040. So that means that if you as a private sector are meant to drive the economy forward, you need the right tools to help you to grow and to ensure that there is sustainability for your business and to ensure that you are existing within a competitive environment that allows you to compete locally, regionally, globally. Now, Invest Oman is a one-stop shop for investment, right? So if you are an investor, whether you're a local investor or a foreign investor, Invest Oman is where you go to ensure that everything you need from an investment perspective is covered. So there are the majority of the government entities, if not all of government entities, have a representative in Invest Oman. So you can go there and ensure that, when you're making an investment, somebody is there to hear you. And the Invest Oman team will help you along that journey. But once you're an established company and once you're operating in Oman, then as per the royal decree, your representative or the facilitator of your interaction with the government is the Oman Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Okay, I see the distinction now. All right, so I want to move on to talk about a little bit about your achievements. Can you tell me some of the most notable things you've done so far as Nazdaher?
So I'll talk a bit about the previous program. So the initiatives that we came out with, these include in terms of the business environment. So we just spoke about Invest Oman. So Invest Oman is one of the initiatives that we had worked on in Nazdaher. The national negotiation team, which sits within Invest Oman, the national investment strategy, the national incentives guide, the incentives map, the investor residence program, as well as tracking the investments in Oman, which we as per our last count, up to 11 billion Omani riyals. We also developed 37 investment opportunities in different sectors. And in terms of foreign trade, we came up with 13 initiatives in exports, imports, and re-exports.
Wow, incredible. Can you give me more specific information about some of these initiatives, an example?
Sure. So when we talk about the investment incentives guide and the investment map, if you were coming to Oman, a lot of foreign investors would tell us, okay, so why Oman? And we would say, there's a whole host of incentives. And they're like, great, how do I find them? And so maybe even though we were doing all of the groundwork, there was no single guide to tell you, how do I invest in Oman in terms of accessing these incentives, right? So we brought all of it together, we put together a guide, and then you're able to also access further support through Invest Oman. You also were able to see from an investment map perspective, let's say you wanted to invest in aquaculture, fish farming. Through the investment map, you would then be able to see where are those investments in Oman. Because as a investor, you know your business better than anyone else does. So you might have already targeted a certain kind of landscape, a certain type of geography, access to close access to ports, close access to cold chain facilities, access to airports. So you would want to know that your investment or the investment that you're targeting is within a certain geographical location. So all of the investments that were put out by the government had gone onto this investment map. And then you were able to then see how close are you to these different facilities. And not only how close are you to those existing facilities, but then you are also able to see, where are those other future investments that, that the government is targeting for private investors to invest in. So you could say, for example, if you were investing in, again, fish farming, aquaculture, is there a cold chain facility nearby? And if you were only to look at it from an existing facilities perspective, you would maybe be you would be disencouraged or discouraged to invest. But then you would see that, okay, there's a future investment nearby that will offer that type of facility. So you're much more encouraged to go forward and make that investment. So it's really about value chains and understanding how the whole ecosystem works together.
It's really interesting how you mentioned fish farming and aquaculture, because I didn't even know that that was something that you also worked on. And you also said something about carbon neutrality, and obviously there's so many diverse things and different projects that you work on. But what are the different phases that you go through when you're implementing these initiatives?
So I'd love to talk about the current program when
Yes.
it comes to how we do that. So as a national program for private sector and foreign trade development, the core of the development process is the private sector, right? And so we've met with, I believe, over 200 companies as part of this development process. And, I wouldn't be it wouldn't be fair for me to say we would love to meet a lot more, and we might have. I'm sorry, if we haven't met with you, but we would love to meet with you. And when I'm saying you, I mean, the businesses that are listening to this, because they really are the partner in making sure that we succeed, and they're partners in success. So we start with the private sector. We start with understanding what are their concerns, what do they need for us to get this vision to succeed. And then we go back to our government stakeholders, and we see how we can work with them to fill in these gaps. And the government has been so open to say, we want this to work, we want to do better, we want to fill in those gaps because we all believe in this vision, right? We're all moving forward to achieve this vision. And we need to talk about it more. We need to talk about this collective effort in terms of trying to achieve this. So we have the private sector on one hand. We ensure that we understand what they need. And then on the other hand, we have those government stakeholders, and we ensure that they are ready to take forth and take action on these initiatives. And then we co-create. So we say, how do we fill in the gap in a way that is sustainable for the government, right? And we find the right owners and the right stakeholders to take things forward. So when we talk about, giving a voice towards the private sector, we're working hand in hand with the Chamber of Commerce, and we're very excited about the potential in this partnership. When we talk about, some of the other initiatives in terms of developing the private sector, we work with Mada'in, for example, to ensure that there is a home for the manufacturing that we're targeting. When we talk about reform in terms of the things that the private sector needs, we work very closely with the Ministry of Commerce, Industry and Investment Promotion. And I must mention that the supervisor of the program is His Excellency Qais bin Mohammed Al Yusuf. So he oversees the program. And that's where we fall within the governance within the government.
Okay, there's a lot of background work that goes into what you do, clearly. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the most major challenges you face when you're doing all of this?
I would say the biggest challenge is, how do we prioritize, right? There's so much to do, and the vision is very ambitious. So where do we start? How do we start? And how much effort do we put towards any one thing? As a program, we're small, we're nimble, but we like to achieve. So when your goal is to achieve, you have to prioritize. Even though you have so much more you want to do, you have to be able to prioritize. And that is why one of the major goals of the program is ensuring the private sector has a voice. Why? Because that gives sustainability to the initiatives. That means that, when I move forward in any other initiative I do, I've already put in place a strong, let's say, voice to tell me where to prioritize. So, like I said, if the program is for the private sector, then the private sector needs to be at the core. And in order to do that, we need to have a clear roadmap of how to bring the private sector in and give them that voice. And then everything falls into place. There are challenges everywhere, but we see challenges as opportunities. So if you flip that challenge on its head and you say, it's a challenge today, but tomorrow it gives you a competitive advantage. So that's the goal, right? It's very difficult for the human mind to understand exponentiality, right? So I used to have one of the founders of one of the companies I used to work for. He told me this crazy thing. Until today, I don't believe it, but when I Googled it, it's true. So if we take this piece of paper and we fold it, and we fold it, and we fold it, and we fold it, and we fold it enough times, that, exponentially, it can reach from the Earth to the moon. Google it.
Okay.
It's true. But our mind cannot see this paper with that potential, right? They say the eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest. So if I invest today, at some point that money is going to work for me and it's going to scale beyond my imagination. And that's what we want, right? We want to have the imagination to understand that exponentiality. And that's the goal.
Wow. Okay, I'm trying to envision that, what you just mentioned right now. You're right. It's really hard to imagine all the potential that we could have. My next question was, what are the biggest opportunities for Oman right now in the private sector, in your opinion?
So we mustn't sort of forget about what we're really good at. And what we're really good at is energy. We have, since the beginning of His Majesty Sultan Qaboos's Renaissance, we've been a leader globally in energy. Now, the face of that has been oil and gas. But as we look forward, hydrogen takes on a huge role, right? Renewable energy takes on a huge role. But also, oil and gas is here to stay. So how do we take advantage of downstream industries in oil and gas? So how do we take that oil and gas and turn it into, how do we manufacture it into other uses? So we're seeing today huge investments in plastics in Oman. We're seeing huge investments in renewable energy. There was an announcement for a polysilicon plant in Sohar, which is an investment in the hundreds of millions of Omani riyals. And Oman is set to be a leader in the renewable energy space. That gives us so many other opportunities. I was surprised to learn that we are in the top globally in terms of percentage of graduates in STEM.
Wow.
Globally, right? So when we talk about opportunities, we need to talk about the opportunity in the potential of the Omani youth, right? The Omani youth are our biggest asset. And the knowledge economy is a key sector for us in Oman moving forward into achieving this vision. Because it takes that potential of the Omani youth and gives them an avenue to be creative, to be inventive, to think beyond, right? When we, again, think about Google in the garage. It was just an idea that a couple of guys had. And now it's one of the largest companies in the world. If we think about Amazon, right? Amazon, Jeff Bezos, for the longest time, didn't have a real desk. It was, I think it was a door or something. He upcycled something, some sort of scrap, and that was his desk. And now Amazon is one of the largest companies in the world. And the potential, not only in Oman, but in the region for the knowledge economy is massive. It's huge. We have, as a region, one of the youngest populations in the world, one of the most educated populations in the world, and one of the most connected populations in the world. We have a great foundation, right? So when we talk about opportunity, it's taking that foundation to the next level, layering on. And I'm excited. Are you excited, Sara?
I'm so
I'm
excited.
so excited. This excites me.
Yeah.
This excites me. The potential for Oman, it truly, truly excites me.
Yeah.
We were speaking earlier, and I was telling you that, I spent my entire career outside of Oman.
Yeah.
And I was drawn to the vision. I was drawn to the potential of the vision. I was drawn to the potential of Oman, and it's not just us as Omanis that hear this, feel this, see this. Others are taking notice. Others are coming and saying, I want to invest in Oman. And that is a huge marker of the potential of that success, right? It's a huge marker for someone else from another country to say, I want to invest in your country,
Yeah.
And I hope that, I hope that, indicator or that level of trust of a foreign investor to come into Oman gives us as Omanis that encouragement, that excitement to also invest in Oman. And we can invest in so many different ways, right? We can invest in, the many IPOs we're seeing coming into Oman. We can invest by, meeting a founder and being an angel investor. We can invest by, starting our own businesses. Or we can just invest by, buying a government bond or a private bond or investing in mutual funds. There's so many different ways for us to invest, but it's time for us to invest in Oman and in our future.
Wow. Now I'm more inclined to invest in more things too. I did want to ask, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but I wanted to ask you, how does Nazdaher accelerate Oman Vision 2040? And you did mention it briefly, but I would like to learn more.
So we look at those gaps, right? And every country in the world has gaps in terms of where it sees itself in the future. If we were to take the example, again, of China or the United States, and we were to talk about something like AI, if you want to achieve your vision for AI, even as the United States or China, right, where you can see where the potential is in the future, you know that you have gaps today, right? So the largest and most competitive economies in the world, when you compare it to where they want to be in the future, they will have gaps. So of course, in Oman, against this vision, there are certain gaps we need to fill. So what we do is we try to understand, how do we fill in those gaps? What is the best mechanism to help us achieve filling in that gap and helping us achieve the goals of this vision? So it could be with a new policy, right? It could be with adjusting a previous policy. It could be with starting a different program or a new program with one of the entities, right? Or it could be building bridges. So again, when we talk about giving the private sector a voice, that is an acceleration of the vision. And it's, if you remember when we were kids, we used to play with these slingshots, right? So for a slingshot to, shoot forward, you have to start to pull it back, right?
Yeah.
But you're building that potential energy. So it takes time to pull it back, but as soon as you let go, and as soon as it shoots away, it moves really fast. So some of the things we want to do, it's about taking something that's existing, harnessing that potential energy, and letting it go as fast as possible into the future.
That's a great analogy. All right. What are the major contributions that are expected by Nazdaher in the coming years?
So I would say the largest and most prominent will be trying to give the private sector a voice in economic matters. So we need to build policy that supports the private sector grow and be competitive. So that would be the biggest hope in terms of and the biggest achievement we can have. But we're also working to ensure that when those Omani companies want to trade abroad in terms of so the foreign trade, they're able to access markets. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had the celebration of 15 years of the Oman-United States Free Trade Agreement. And that is a huge potential for Omani companies. So how do we tap into not just the United States market, but the markets in which Oman has, free trade agreements? And it's a huge honor for Oman to have these free trade agreements. It shows the trust that all these other countries put in Oman, in the Omani market, in the Omani government, and in the Omani people. And we have a lot we can do in terms of trading with these countries. We also are working to build value chains in economic clusters, so in terms of the opportunities within those clusters. So in a nutshell, that's what we're trying to cover. We're working to make the Omani economy more competitive. We're working to ensure the private sector can grow. And it's very important to say that we are not doing this alone. We're doing this within an ecosystem of other national programs, and we're doing this with our major partners in success, the government. Because if we want this to move forward in the right way, the government takes ownership of these initiatives. And we've already seen success, right? We've already seen how these initiatives can take place on the ground with the government and can work in a world-class manner. And we just want to keep taking this forward and ensure that this vision is realized. And I'm looking here, it says, moving forward with confidence. So that's what we want to do. We want to move forward with confidence.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next, inshallah. And where can people find you to learn more about Nazdaher?
Sure. So we are on LinkedIn, we're on Instagram, and we're on X. So tweet at us. Those are the primary channels. And I'm sure if you reach out through one of those channels, we will respond and we'll find a way to interact. And I guess that's the way.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish off this interview? I
just want to say thank you, for having me here today. I look forward to many more interactions with Oman FM. And I look forward to seeing this vision become a reality. It's exciting times for Oman.
It really is. It was such a pleasure to have you here today, and I learned so much about Nazdaher. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sara.